Hello, Max.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon from our side.
Yes. Let me just check. There was a message coming in. Okay, I just reply. All right.
I think we're all set. We'll start dot on time, around 4.
Shall I try my screen share just to be on the safe side?
Yes, yes, yes. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's working. Yes.
Is this coming through fine?
Yes. It's
Okay,
perfect.
great.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's turn this off. Okay.
Yeah.
I think this is probably my last presentation for the year.
Yeah, I hope so. Because this Christmas is coming.
Yes.
So you'll go for vacation. You'll go on a vacation. Are you going anywhere? Or you'll be in
No,
Australia?
I'll be online in the office till Thursday, and then we'll just do like with the family a short trip in Victoria. Because,
Okay.
I think international travel is still a bit
With USD. And I know.
yeah. Also with interstate travel is very strict here in Australia. So which is good, but just that I think Victoria is a nice place to be anyhow. So Melbourne, that's all good.
And I think Andrew is there. Andrew Robb, he stays in Victoria, right? If I'm
Sorry?
not wrong. Andrew Robb?
Andrew Robb, yes. He lives
Yeah.
in Melbourne as well, yeah.
Okay. So Mehzabin, I think we should start. Just dot flow, okay? I think Max, you can stop the presentation because I think they're going to show something. Before introducing you, they're going to show your videos.
Shall I just start?
Yes, if you just stop, I think that would be better because then they can share the screen.
Sorry?
You can, if you stop presenting now, then they can present the video footage before introducing
so I can
you.
just start.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can start now.
All right. Well, yeah. Good afternoon for you. Greetings from Melbourne. Let me just try one thing, okay? Kamono Acho Shonai. You get it a little bit? Okay. Amak, Amontra, Jana, or Jono Donabad. You know what I'm trying to say?
Okay. I think Mehzabin, she needs to introduce you to the audience and she can start the whole program. Mehzabin, yes, please take the lead. And then welcome Andrew.
Welcome to
Okay.
Masterclass Smartphone Filmmaking Theory and Practice, organized by Dhaka International Mobile Film Festival. I am Mahzabin Muntaha Tamim, your host for this session. We are very glad to have you all here. Before moving forward, I would kindly request everyone to please mute your microphones and open your cameras. If you have any queries, you can raise your hand at the end of the session, or you can leave them in the chat box as well. At the end of the session, you will be provided evaluation form. I would love to request everyone to fill the form. We will even provide the form via email. For today's masterclass, we have Dr. Max Slager with us to teach us about smartphone filmmaking theory and practice. Without any delay, I would like to request Dr. Max to take the session after this video.
Good day again. Good evening for you. And let me try again. Take two. Como acho shonai. Amok Amantron Jana or Jonathan Abad. Thanks for inviting me. And it's really great that I can join you online to come, to Bangladesh, so to say. Maybe there's a chance sometimes to go in person and meet you, which would have been the preferred way, to learn a little bit about what's happening with smartphone filmmaking at your great festival as well. But it's great to be at the DIMFF and do a session on smartphone filmmaking theory and practice. I will mainly focus on the new book that just out this year, which has been published by Bloomsbury, and I will talk a little bit also about MINA, the Mobile Innovation Network and Association, and maybe if there's time, some of my own films, or at least give you a bit of an introduction to this. As I'm joining you from Melbourne, Australia, I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. We respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which Swinburne's Australian campus are located in Melbourne's east and outer east, and pay our respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. And I'm joining you from these lands today as well. We are honored to recognize our connection to Wurundjeri country, history, culture, and spirituality through these locations, and strive to ensure that we operate in a manner that respects and honors the elders and ancestors of these lands. We also respectfully acknowledge Swinburne's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff, students, alumni, partners, and visitors. We also acknowledge and respect the traditional owners of the lands across Australia, their elders and ancestors, cultures, and heritage, and recognize the continuing sovereignties of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations. So on Twitter, you can find me at Max Mobile, because I'm quite passionate about mobile media, smartphone filmmaking, or let's say, mobile devices in generally. And yeah, feel free to if you get any questions, touch base via Twitter, to, tweet or talk to this way. Or of course, I think it's always very great to have a bit of a discussion in the end that we can really, get to meet you and talk online. I'm a senior lecturer at Swinburne University of Technology, and just a bit of a disclaimer, at Swinburne, we are like I always say we're the best film school in the country, but I think we're very good. And of course, we not only work with smartphones, but I think it's really amazing to see that we also now teach into smartphone filmmaking. So at Swinburne, we've got ARRI Alexa cameras, you've got the Blackmagics and the Reds, but there's something new happening. And I think that's really great that we also, have a course in my experimental screen production where we deal with smartphone filmmaking. If you want to see some of my own projects, you can go to schleser.nz. And as you can hear from the name, that's a German surname that's been hosted in New Zealand, Aotearoa, for quite some time. So that's why the domain name .nz. Yeah, I'm also a Pakeha New Zealander. I've lived there for 7 years and now for 5 years in Melbourne. And I launched a MINA when I moved to New Zealand in 2011. And we went through a bit of rebranding over time because we really wanted to, it's been growing. And so that's why it's now the Mobile Innovation Association. I'm also an Adobe education leader. And so, which of course is great to see because there's now, apps like Adobe Rush and, lots of other apps for video editing. like Splice Video that Spark that allow you to do things like other applications that are free. They're like Splice, for instance. And I get really interested in mobile, smartphone, and pocket filmmaking. So in the picture you can see an I think it was an N95, a Nokia. I don't know if anyone of you remembers the Nokia phone, but that's the time when I got into mobile filmmaking, which is now smartphone filmmaking. And it was really, for me, that you got a mobile device, a mobile phone, because you need that anyhow, but you can use it also as a camera. And so thinking about, budget for me was great because it means you don't have to spend or get a camera rental or purchase a camera, but you could, get your mobile phone, then spend that, for instance, to go to locations. But of course, also it was really interesting to work with that sort of aesthetic exploration at the time, because that mobile phone looked very different. So that was thing that was really, really amazing to see. And so yeah, so like it's around 2007 when I first uploaded my first experiments and micro movies and short films. And the picture which is there on the right, the stripe, which is a short film that I edited and edited on a mobile device. So that was around 2013, Midtown. I made this in the US. And so, which is, done on the iPhone 4. That's when really apps really took off. So I think it's a really fast moving space, and it's really exciting to explore what can be done with smartphone technology. The picture in the middle is one of my, it's a great documentary, a collaborative documentary that I worked on with the National Council for Women in the Pacific Islands, in Rarotonga, which was the National Council for Women, so the biggest NGO on the islands. And so, which is also another thing that I'm very passionate about, is thinking about how to create collaborative smartphone films. So in total, I've created 2 feature-length documentaries or experimental smartphone mobile documentaries and about a dozen of short films. Some of them are exhibited in galleries, some in film festivals, some are more for TV, and I've also created a few transmedia projects. So really thinking about storytelling across different platforms and working with platforms to be part of the storytelling as itself. And this year, I finally finished 2 cinematic VR projects as well. So that's another thing which might be the future of smartphone filmmaking in a way. And yeah, Mina, keep liking us and following us on Instagram. I need to do a bit of updating at the end of the year. So of course we are open for submissions already for next year. The next screening we're working towards now is planned for December 2022. And we will have again a screening at ACMI, the Australian Centre for the Moving Image. So it's a place to be in Australia in terms of cinemas and film culture. And we also work in collaboration for the last 3 years with the University of Nottingham, Ningbo, China. So we're also planning to have a screening in Ningbo in December. And yeah, Mina has been running since 2011. And we do not only screenings, but I think it's always very important to have a discussion on smartphone filmmaking, and that there is a way to meet smartphone filmmakers. And of course, with smartphone filmmaking, we are like shifting away from this as the audience, these are the filmmakers, because then the audience might be smartphone filmmakers, and it might inspire you to make some films. And so that's always very interesting to also not only watch the films, but have a good discussion on which directions is smartphone filmmaking taking, and what does the future of this look like, and what are the latest trends and developments. And you can see there is a panel discussion at ACMI, the Australian Centre for the Moving Image. But we've done also other sort of, more, let's say, probably unconventional or experimental venues. So every year we also have screenings on public screens. We also now work with Urban Screen TV, and we also have some screenings that are at arts festivals. So like in the, in the middle there, you can see a picture of the Wellington Fringe Festival. It was literally a projector on the top of 2 cars with a generator, and that probably was the screen that generated the most engagement, because Cuba Street, where the screening took place, is a place to be on a Friday, Saturday afternoon in Wellington. And for two days, I think we had so many crowds engaging in this online, or sorry, on-site screening, I wanted to say. And yeah, so the thing to Mina, with all the different smartphone film festivals that are there around the world, I think MENA is really the creative one, one that is for creative arts, that is looking for aesthetic exploration, that is quite experimental. And we are also about, in a way, I think, pushing the boundaries and trying out new things. And there's at least 1 or 2 films that we screen every year that might not be screened elsewhere. So we really want to, be taking the risk, and we want to be very bold and very pushing the boundaries to see what is possible. We also work in collaboration with lots of international smartphone film festivals. So I'm also looking forward to this dialogue that we will have. And we run lots of workshops. So there's a picture here from the St Kilda Film Festival in Melbourne, Australia, in 2018, I think. And St Kilda Film Festival is the biggest independent film festival, the longest running independent film festival in Australia. And it was amazing. It was so popular. There were people sitting on the floor, and then people standing in the hallway to come inside. But it was also a really critical audience, because this was an audience full of independent filmmakers. We had some really great discussions about people like, so what do you do with sound? And I'm like, yeah, I'm coming to this. There's XLR microphones, there's connectors that you can use your XLR microphones that you have, and we're talking about the different creative processes and also things where you can maybe use how to integrate a smartphone into another type of production. But it was really great to have this feedback from the industry, to see that there is more avenues, more ways to produce, especially short films. And of course, everyone talks about Soderbergh's Unsane or, Baker's Tangerine. But, if you've got $2 million, like Steven Soderbergh, or $2, like all of us have, you can make it, right? And that's, I think, the great thing about smartphone filmmaking is also a bit of an equalizer. And that having a great idea allows you to make a film. There's, of course, really fantastic gear. There's ND filters, there is microphones, there's gimbals, there's accessoires, there's drones, so you can really push it to whatever level you want to reach. But I always say the best camera is the one that you get on you. I get this also, try to translate from a neighbor. Chopche bola camera, hoche toma smartphone, jata tui, sop some boyakua. So I think, just to make sure, like, we can do this internationally, I think the best camera is one that you get on you. And yeah, sorry about my bad pronunciation, but if I come once, I will practice, so you can help me to get it right. I could try to teach you some German as well. It would probably be as funny, but yeah, I think really, I'm quite amazed by all the camera gear that is out there. But if you only have your smartphone, whatever smartphone it is, you can make a start with us. Any camera will be able, any smartphone will be able to be good enough for you. If you get just a very old phone, it doesn't matter what phone, just what brand, it will take still images. You can even do fantastic work just by using still images. And of course, nowadays lots of apps that can also work with editing. I mean, if you're producing a feature film, you might want to think about using standard video editing applications. But there's lots of possibilities. I not only run these workshops for festivals, but also for community groups. And I think that is something that is really fantastic to see. So we've done this, you can see in these pictures here, with some young, with youngsters, high school students, for a project in New Zealand, Aotearoa. And it was sort of students that were in a so-called social hotspot, but it was really amazing to see how creative these students actually were. But we've done the same thing also, a similar approach, more or less the same thing, so to say. It's all about smartphone filmmaking. As you can see there in the picture with senior citizens. So, if you're 16 or 60, it doesn't matter. You can be a filmmaker, and smartphone filmmaking can help solve lots of problems in this world. So the picture with the tree was from a project about ecology. And so you might say, oh, smartphone is not the most ecological tool. No, maybe not. But what camera is an ecological tool then? I mean, there's open source cameras and open source smartphones. I know that, which would be great to see more maybe. But the idea is that everyone can participate in this project and everyone has a voice. And so the really big questions of these times we will only solve everyone gets to say something about this. And so that is the idea of smartphone filmmaking. If you'd like to see more about Mina, please join our screening programs. So you can look on our website, you get the programs and trailers. And we also have the show reels from the last years, the screening reels as well from the last years on the education shop. And this year we also had a hybrid virtual screening, so that because of COVID, of course, which meant that we had also a pretty good international audience. So, but yeah, if you connect with our social media, you'll find out a little about these environments.
Hi, Max. I just wanted to ask you, like, do you do your screening only in Melbourne or it's in Sydney as well?
We do our screening in Melbourne, but we are trying to work for next year with a Sydney-based festival as well. So, which is the Smartphone Flick Fest, SF3, where we're in Sydney. And so we are trying to just, get something together for next year. And we might plan a screening next year in Melbourne with SF3 and maybe also a Mina screening in Sydney. We will see. It's not decided yet, but mainly in Melbourne, yeah. But we do sometimes screenings, for instance, also via the Urban Screen TV network, and they have public screens in Melbourne and in Sydney as well. So yeah, there's some opportunities to get the work.
But I always feel like the Melbourne ones are like a bit more artsy, like than the Sydney festivals. Yeah, Melbourne is like more of an art city. I feel like that.
Melbourne is more, say again, please.
I feel like Melbourne is like better for this like film festivals. A lot more audience, a lot more vibrant and stuff. Yeah, not much.
Well, I mean, it's like with any major, with like this big. Every country has this, two cities debates. But I think like the Melbourne and Sydney are two great, film cultures. And maybe there's a few more independents in Melbourne, which is a bit more about the Melbourne is more the arts city in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but yeah, I mean, we're working on this. So yeah, watch the space.
Thank you.
No worries.
I have a request to everyone. If you have any questions or any query, please raise your hand at the end of the session. We have a question answer session at the end of this session.
Okay.
I don't think Max really minds if I ask him something. Do you mind, Max, really?
No, you could ask. It's it's a masterclass, so you can like ask now as well if it's
Thank you.
No worries. But I mean, yeah. Otherwise, keep your sessions in the end. I really want to make sure that we take some time for questions as well. But if it's a burning question, no worries. All good. I just wanted to briefly mention another thing that I'm really excited about. We're doing lots of work at the moment. Is a little bit sometimes outside of just the film industry or just the film culture, is to see how mobile devices, smartphone filmmaking has an impact on. But you must mute your microphones. Sorry. On other disciplines. So there's 3 edited collections that are co-published, mobile media making in age of smartphones, mobile story making in age of smartphones, and now in January will be out mobile storytelling in age of smartphones. And so as part of an academic and scholarship, that might be of interest to you. Mobile media making in age of smartphones explores aesthetics, space and place, knowledge, stories, and the self. And it was very much an investigation to examine how representation and experiences are shaped through creative practices and digital ethnographies of new visualities and socialities. Mobile story making in age of smartphone further develops this discourse and continues to define creative mobile media. So that's something that I'm quite interested in, is story making. So thinking about the whole process of producing, distribution, exhibition in one, embracing the audience, what used to be the audience right from the beginning. And we can here really think about contributing to formulating democratic processes and equity, which are imperative to create change and challenge traditional models of media production and consumption. So this edited collection focused on creating, collaboration, and curation as the mobile making, story making approach, and looked at story making, making spaces, and making change. And then mobile storytelling in an age of smartphones continues these dynamics, and we will have a section on mobile news storytelling, vulnerable communities and social innovation, mobile creative arts, and mobile education and translation. But now I really would like to come to smartphone filmmaking theory and practice. And so, you know, when you ask me, I sort of don't think that every story has to be, you know, smartphone story. So not every project, you know, is suitable for smartphone film. But there's a few things which I think are very key. So one, more personal and more authentic stories are surfacing, and that is happening through smartphone filmmaking. Two, there's greater access to storytelling. Three, we've got more community engagement strategies. And the other thing not to underestimate, and if I'm really keen to, you know, talk to you in Bangladesh tonight, is smartphone filmmaking is a global phenomenon with festivals in Asia and Africa. And so, of course, that also means that local culture can be produced and disseminated in these countries, but also internationally. There's a bit of a theoretical, you know, so I did my PhD on mobile documentaries in 2011. There's an interesting book on cell films from 2016. There's something a bit publication on mobile cinema, and there was something on mobile filmmaking from 2017. But I think no one really looked at the theory and practice for smartphone filmmaking to talk about them as, you know, a field of its own. And I think that's one of the key things that I really want to establish with this book, is that we talk about any film or any genre of a film and compare this to a film in that genre. And with smartphone filmmaking for a long time, we have looked at smartphone films and then discussed them in relation to feature films or short films. And I think, no, there's so many smartphone films and so many festivals, we can really talk about smartphone filmmaking within one film form. And so in the picture here, I did a bit of a mapping from 2012. So you can see Mina was in New Zealand, because that's where Mina was at that time. And then it moved from New Zealand out to Aotearoa to Melbourne. And of course, some of these festivals, you know, disappear after some time, some new festivals or, you know, emerge. But I think the key thing that we sort of, you know, have seen now over the last 10 years is really smartphones can be presented on the big screen, right? And, you know, again, like I said before, when someone asks, that happens in all these workshops, what's the best smartphone to work with? I'm always telling you the one that's in your packet. And yes, we can now talk about smartphone filmmaking in relation to other smartphone films. But of course, there's so many smartphone films, we need to have a bit of an understanding how we approach this. And the other thing, which I think is also really trying this book to do, is trying to create a community of practice. So that we've got smartphone filmmakers who are really interested in exploring the creative potential of smartphone filmmaking. Next to these filmmakers, we also have smartphone film festivals. And I think that is something that really needs to be highlighted a lot more, because yes, some of these smartphone film festivals are supported, you know, very well by the government. So in France or South Korea, for instance, in the US, smartphone filmmaking seems to be a business model. In some countries, you know, we work with universities, so very much like, you know, what you're doing, and that's of course the same case for Mina. And of course, that's always a great thing to think about the future and the next generation of smartphone filmmakers. But I also really, with this book, want to put a bit of a spotlight on who are these film festival organizers and who has been, you know, putting lots of effort and lots of heart and soul into these, you know, festivals. And these festivals are, of course, very important for the film culture in a way to disseminate and share the work. And so, you know, this was 2012. I did another mapping in 2018, and of course, you know, you're on the map as well now. And so just a bit of color coding to look at, you know, some of the festivals that have been like, you know, orange is, you know, 5 to 7 years, then green 2 to 4 years, and yellow in 2018 was 1 year. And of course, there's around, like this year, I did a bit of a sourcing again. There's about 33 film festivals, at the moment, mobile or smartphone film festivals out there. So you can see it's growing. It's growing every year. There's more diversity, more choices, and they are happening in all parts of the world. And so when we study normally, I think we should also consider some of the films that have been made in the past with mobile phones and some of the characteristics of the early smartphone films. They were filmed with very different smartphones, but these films from 2008, they had some similarities, and these similarities are still relevant for contemporary smartphone films. So if we talk about intimacy, things that are personal stories, also thinking about the immediacy, of course, of smartphone filmmaking, and the significance of location. This is very much what resonated in the early mobile phone films from 2018. These things are still relevant as a creative strategy for contemporary smartphone films. So what worked with the Nokia phone, of course, now works also with the latest iPhone. And so just on the picture here, you can see, which I sort of call the first wave of, filmmakers trying to make films with smartphones, mobile phones rather. They weren't really supposed to make any films because, you were just maybe supposed to take a picture or a very short video. And so you can see Iran Kaganov, who made SMS Sugarman in South Africa. Or there was my first feature film, Max the Kaitai, which was filmed in Japan, which is about Japanese cities. And also Nusea from Matthew Noel Todd. And these films were presented in the Lumiere Cinema. This was the first ever screening of mobile smartphone films in London. And so the Lumiere Cinema, I think, is a great place because, 112 years before, the Lumiere cinematograph was presented, and people weren't quite sure what they were seeing. They saw for the first time moving images, and now they were seeing in the same venue for the first time feature-length mobile phone films. And of course, nowadays, we talk about smartphone filmmaking in Hollywood, but I think it's quite good to recognize that, Soderbergh or Sean Baker were not the first ones, right? There's a whole history of smartphone filmmaking. The second wave, then, we can see some filmmakers like Cyrus Frisch, Mark America, which is a picture there of the Nokia phone, or Adam Kozov making Moscow Diaries. And these filmmakers would have had all the access to any camera, but they chose the mobile phone for very particular reasons. Because it was allowed them to tell stories in ways that they couldn't do it with another camera. And so I think that is the strength of smartphone filmmaking, mobile phone filmmaking. There was also a great festival in France, the Pocket Film Festival, which was in Les Halles, so a very prominent space. And you can see some very prominent figures in France presented their films. They were very well-established filmmakers that started to make films with mobile devices. And so for the book, Smartphone Filmmaking Theory and Practice, I looked into all the different MENA festivals, and I was trying to look at all these films and try to see where can I really make some similarities? Where can I see that there are certain, commonalities between these films? And so I established a couple of modes of smartphone filmmaking. There's a quite well-known text and documentary studies, which are the documentary modes that Bill Nichols established. And then more recently in interactive documentaries from Aston, Gudenzi, and Rose, there was a definition of IDocs, so interactive documentary modes. And these sort of modalities were very successful, and they did the work in a very good way because there's so many different documentaries, there's so many interactive documentaries. How can we really try to categorize them and try to have a discussion about them? It's not to say, as everyone with Nichols as well as Aston, Gudenzi, and Rose say that these categories are absolute, but they are about trying to make us think how we can talk about certain characteristics. So, and it doesn't mean that these are like the only ways that we can talk about these films, but at least it gives us a form of organization. So that's something, probably the one that I'm most excited about, is the poetic and experimental mode. So 21st century experimental film and time-based media, which not only exhibit in the gallery or museums context, but is also situated online or in semi-permanent ephemeral forms and formats. The participatory and engagement mode, which of course touches upon co-creation, collaboration, and community engaged media. So it's closely related to what Nichols' participatory documentary mode would set out to do, but expands on this linear and narrative form by engaging audience as actively participants and co-creators into the creative process and the smartphone film production. The creative process in the participatory engagement mode in filmmaking shifts from script to screen to shoot and share. The dissemination element is no longer only part of the final project, but allows participants and co-producers to continue to contribute to the production and continue this discussion. Then we get the smartphone native mode, and that's what I'm referring to here, is filmed and edited entirely on smartphones, of course, via apps. So the smartphone native video terminology is adapted from social media, which references native video as videos that are uploaded to or created on social networks and played in feed, as opposed to links on videos hosted on other sites. In this context, smartphone filmmaking, this means videos are filmed, edited, and uploaded from mobile devices and smartphones. So as opposed to editing in a desktop studio when you're no longer on the location. The specificity of mobile devices affords novel approaches to editing and storytelling while being out and about. So, and some festivals, like I mentioned before, my colleagues in Sydney, which is a really fantastic festival, the SF3 Smartphone Flicks Festival, or Filmic Pro from the app, they get a Filmic Fest, and they refer to these emerging formats made on mobile. But I really want to be very bold and sort of say they are, they're of course filmed on mobile, but they're also edited on mobile. Then we have the conversational mode, as mobile devices characterize the fusion of communication and lens-based media. This communication mode is characterized by opening up a dialogue through storytelling. The accessibility of smartphone affords more voices coming to the screens and thus democratizing storytelling. And then, of course, we've got what I like to call the red carpet in your pocket. And that, of course, is borrowed from Karl Bardosch, the term. Narrative films, which use Hollywood conventions to produce smartphone short or feature films. So these are the different. Sorry, can you please mute your microphone? Or can the host please mute the other person? Okay, so let's have a look at some of the experimental films. The first category, so which is the poetic and experimental mode. I mean, of course, the one thing, if we define a film as experimental, it means it resists the coherent formation of anything else. So that's what makes experimental sometimes a bit, a bit diverse, a bit difficult to sort of get into. But I think smartphone filmmaking is a perfect example, a perfect idea for experimental modes, because it affords experimentation. You get the phone always on you, you can film. If it didn't work out, you try to analyze and learn from it, and then continue to make another great project. So 3 examples here out of the many examples that streamed at Mina, but just the one that was so microscopic was called Big City, which was a microscope filmed and then used sounds from streets. So you had like a cityscape sound, and then you had these microscopic images, which sort of was a really, I think, immersive idea to make us understand how organs come to life, or how live in cities come to life in a more visual way. There's quite a bit of underwater filmmaking happening, but like I think the first we had at Mina was Dark Waves, and just sort of you can take your mobile phone everywhere. It's it can go into the orbit. There's a picture I'll show you later. It can go onto the ocean. It can go underwater. And Anders Weberg, who has been making lots of films, very much experimental films, made a film Absent Homage to Maya Deren. So very much a reference to, you know, the experimental filmmaker Maya Deren. And so I think we can revive and continue some of the experimental traditions. From the participatory and engagement mode, there's a still image, you know, on the top left, yours and mine, which Anna Massoni created these selfies by herself and by three other characters. And so we didn't really know who these four women were, but we immediately, you know, created a connection to them and to their worlds. So I think a very, like, you know, very interesting way to think about, yeah, co-creating that story. You get the smartphone native mode, which is, you know, produced, filmed, edited, and uploaded from the mobile phone. Days at Armageddon Beach by Leibowitz, Pacific Colors, which is filmed in 2017, Daydreaming by Vanessa Fox, and then 5 Calls from 2011. Then you get the conversational mode, which is 2 stories, which is a film about a refuge from Syria, and Tofu Man, which is made from Andrew Robb, a fellow Melbourne-based filmmaker. And I think it's really great to see how you can engage into a particular community with the conversational mode and really start a conversation with a subject that you are passionate about. And then we've got some examples here from the red carpet in your pocket mode, so which is Got in My Pocket, which is a feature film from France, Life and Death of the iPhone, which, you know, follows the life cycle, so to say, of an iPhone from in the US 2015, and then Bubbles Don't Lie, which is it's a very, like, yeah, very humorful take on using these sort of bubbles across, which are almost like an AR reference, I would say. But I don't want to spoil it. You know, you should really try to see the film. But if we talk about the production approaches, you know, you can see here a screenshot from the life and death of an iPhone in the museum, and then you can see here a screenshot from Bubbles.ly. So I think with smartphone filmmaking, you could, like I said before, you can do everything. You can start to film, you know, just in a selfie mode wherever you are. You know, it seems that there's a security guard, you know, just after behind the filmmaker, trying to probably tell him that, you know, asking what is he's doing. But yeah, you know, that sort of is part of the project that he made. Or you can do, like, you know, a more professional approach where you've got, you know, maybe a bit of crew with you and you work with a tripod. And, like, you know, there is no right or wrong. There is, you know, everything is possible. So I like to say, I like to talk to my students, I say, you know, the only limitation is your imagination, right? So, you know, there is no boundary if you don't want to set yourself one. So let's very briefly, because we rushed a bit with time, talk about the smartphone film festivals. So in the book, I hope you get it, you can then you know, read all the details, so to say. But just very briefly to give you sort of an like a sort of snapshot, there's the International Mobile Film Festival San Diego, an interview with Jose Bordello. There's a Mobile Motion from Switzerland and from Sai Harrox. There's a SF3, the Smartphone Flick Fest here in Sydney, an interview with Angela. And then there's the African Smartphone International Film Festival in Lagos, Nigeria, interview with Michael. And I think they've just been running a really fantastic festival this year. I think today or tomorrow is the last day. So, you know, if you get a chance, check it out. And then there is an interview with Karl Badosh, who is from New York University. And he set up one of the first mobile phone film festivals in India. The next section is about smartphone filmmakers. And of course, there's so many smartphone filmmakers. So what I decided to do is I decided to focus on these filmmakers that chose a mobile phone for once and stayed with a mobile phone. There's some smartphone filmmakers that do traditional filmmaking with, you know, all kinds of cameras, then make a mobile phone film, and then go back to filming with other cameras. That's fine, of course, no worries. But I think what I really wanted to do is these are like the sort of, you know, I want to say diehards, you know, like the ones that are really passionate about smartphone filmmaking or mobile media more generally. Conrad Mess from Spain, I think he won more than 50 awards for his films. He makes very narrative films, very Tarantino-like, but it's very popular, very famous. Then there's Camille Baker from the UK, and she makes really interesting new media art. She works with verbals, and she's really like into remixing and thinking very much about the future of smartphone filmmaking. So I think that's sort of some things that in her work where technology still doesn't work yet, she's really pushing and telling us what could be done, and then technology follows up. Yeah, really aesthetically, but also really innovative work. There is Filippo Cardona. You can see here a screenshot from Checklist. He won in 2004 Interfilm in Berlin with his video loops, and he's still a smartphone filmmaker now. And yeah, also great to see, of course, someone from the Southern Hemisphere and South America. And Gerda Sema is from she lives in Canada. Is from Belgium, a documentary filmmaker, documentary arts producer that sort of did lots of work with with proper film, 60mm, but no move to smartphone filmmaking. And again, I think also very passionate about smartphone filmmaking and very much decided to stay in that space. The other section that is then following on from this is the creative industry section. So, of course, smartphone filmmaking is supporting in smartphone film through smartphone filmmaking. We can now see companies like Luma Touch, so the editing app from Luma Fusion, and Terry Morgan, an interview with her. There's a colleague, Benoit Labaudret from France. He's a filmmaker, film festival director, an educator, and a consultant. And I think he's been in the space of smartphone mobile filmmaking for a long time. And there's an interview with Adobe, because they've got very much Adobe Rush out. So, an app to allow you to edit on the go. And yeah, of course, I'm an Adobe education leader. So, but I think also the great thing is Adobe Rush is I think yes, 2 or 3 exports anyhow, and if you stay editing on the mobile device, it seems to be free at the moment. And then there's Truman Optics, which is a company here from Australia, but I think through smartphone filmmaking, that's what they're like supporting this community. So it's part of our creative economy, so to say. And there is Jason van Genderen with Treehouse, which is a production company, and they are like an old mobile production company. So I think nowadays you can set up a video business and just work all on mobile platforms. So I think it's never a better time, I think, for smartphone filmmaking, for content production, and all you really need is a smartphone for editing. If you then go for long form, of course, you need to have a computer, but anything that is in the short film domain, you can do these sort of things. Just before we get to the end, just a couple of things I really want to flag up. So, of course, there's a colleague in Melbourne who makes mobile music, Martin Koshofko, and I think it's if you listen to the Mina show reel, screening reel, there's his music, and he produces this all on mobile devices. There was a great project from Angelo Cicciaccio, an Italian designer that lives in France, and he did all kinds. He filmed also with other cameras, not only a smartphone, but he was editing his project while he was like traveling, I think, a year around the world. And another colleague from Australia, Rob Layton, who is also the picture below is Luis Eduardo Juarez from the US, who make these quite amazing underwater cinematography. If you follow Rob Layton's Instagram account, you will get every 2 days a fantastic surf video, or Luis Eduardo Juarez has created these amazing music videos. So, which is like, very imaginative ways, I think, to storytelling. What I did then in the book is I went into the filmic modes and looked, can I find these filmic modes not only in the MENA screening, but also in the industry? And of course they are there. And so I did a bit of an analysis about the different modes. So you could hear the poetic an experimental mode. And there's a couple of different films that I talked about: Hinterland, Our Humanity, Night Fishing by the Park Chan-wook and Park Chan-kyung. Their production company, Park and Chan's Films, and they won in 2011 the Golden Bear at the Berlinale for Best Short Film. So quite amazing, surreal smartphone film. And then there's also Homemade Spacecraft with the picture that I wanted to mention, I said before, which he put a mobile phone onto an air balloon, and that a weather balloon that traveled to the stratosphere. So and you can see these modes which resonated at MENA, of course, are also be seen in the industry. The red carpet in your pocket mode, I discussed a couple of films. You can see here Blue Moon, which we also screened last year at MENA. Was a very successful film. It's it made now lots of awards at festivals. It's disseminated online. So it's an 86-minute noir thriller. And then also the other film, Uneasily Lies the Mind. Just the pictures here. And again, so all the things that I discussed about the films for the red carpet in your pocket, for the MENA screening, of course, applies, and you can resonate this in the film industry. For the conversational mode, I've just very briefly depicted 3 films here, and I think what I find really exciting is that these films, you can see a still image from Selfie, from Ferrante, Midnight Traveler, and Saudi Runaway. These films wouldn't have been possible with another camera than a smartphone, and they were presented at the Berlinale. They've received major funding from Arte or National Geographic, and so I think the Selfie film was filmed by an Italian filmmaker, and he went to a bit of a troubled community where in Neapel, where a young teenager was shot by the police because they mistaken him for a mafiosi. And so the 2 best friends made a film, and they used the selfie mode to make a film about their neighborhood and their environment. And so they filmed with this sort of selfie idea, and the film looks very different, but it's very authentic. Saudi Runaway, it's by a Swiss German filmmaker, Susanne Regina Moires, and she co-created this film with Muna, who escaped a forced marriage in Arabia, Saudi Arabia. And so again, this film couldn't have been produced, with a camera, because the woman Muna wasn't supposed to be filming. And another very moving documentary, which is Midnight Traveler, which is the family escaping Afghanistan and their journey to Europe, and how they had to struggle with smugglers and the situation that they were facing. And the whole family was part involved in this film production. Then there's, of course, I don't really have time to go into this, but the whole world of mobile social media, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, there's now some very specific formats and productions emerging, and lots of them are also produced on, of course, the smartphones, because that's where these productions are produced for, or that's where the films are disseminated for. These, not films, short films, micro movies, I like to call them. Just some, if you like it or not, vertical video is there's also a bit written about in this book. There's some festivals like Vertifilms in the Czech Republic, where you can see in the picture, screens are presented in the vertical format. There is now a German broadcaster launched a vertical motion studio. And the other thing that I write about in the book is music videos. There's quite a few music producers that made some really successful smartphone films as music videos. And of course, music videos are very much a creative license. So it's great for filmmakers, it's great for the music artists to produce work even if they don't have great budgets. And they can do this while they're on tour, while they're out and about. And there's some really good examples. It's a project, Nucleus, that we created with the Goethe Institute, which is all about ecology and smartphone filmmaking. We invited 9 filmmakers from 7 countries to New Zealand. And a really fantastic project. in the book, I also write about a web series, so to say, that I created, which is called Tales from Shire, which is about smartphone filmmaking with rural communities in Victoria. Sorry, a bit pushed with time now. Just managed to get some time for questions and answers. And also at Mina, I've been doing some work now very much with cinematic VR or mobile cinematic VR. And, that could be one of the futures of smartphone filmmaking as well, because, you can use your smartphone to view 360 videos, and you can control 360 video cameras through your smartphone. So, there's something happening in that space as well, very much in the same way that in Russia, there is a Cinezon, which is a video store that disseminates smartphone films on a blockchain. And the Russian filmmaker Boris Gold produced 2 feature films that are disseminated now in Russia through this online blockchain-based video store. More light here going. Okay. I think I want to reserve a bit of time for questions and answers as well. So let me stop my screen share. And
thank you so much, Dr. Max, for this wonderful session. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is the time to share your questions with us. If you have any questions or something that you would like to know about the film for the director himself, by writing in the chat box. Our guest would love to answer your all queries.
just trying to see your links that you posted in there. And I'm very just while you're thinking about your questions, I would be great to come to Dhaka and like to Bangladesh to see more smartphone films in Bangladesh, and yeah, learn more about what kind of films are being produced in Bangladesh, and what kinds of films you would like to produce, maybe where we could help with Mina. I think that would be like really exciting to see, like what type of stories are screened in Bangladesh. But if you got any questions, please feel free to ask. The only good question, the only bad question, I should say, is the question that you don't ask.
I thought I had a question, so.
Yes, even if it's just a comment, that's fine too.
Okay, I think the chats are disabled, so I was wondering as to whether or not to step up and ask my questions straight ahead, or should I just wait for somebody to?
Just ask. No worries. Just go for it.
Okay, thank you. It's just that I was wondering as to what's your take on the feasibility of pulling off more challenging films like tech noirs and neo noirs through the advent and copulation of, I don't know, vis-a-vis pocket films, or smartphone films. I mean using smartphones, that is. How feasible do you think is pulling off neo-noir films using smartphones? Because obviously I can understand that there's this, it has to be technically sound. I think we all understand that neo-noirs pulling off something as something of the scale of neo-noirs does require sort of a technical soundness. But I just wonder, how feasible do you think it is? Is it unprecedented? Has it ever been made before? Thank you.
I'm sure there are some films that you could classify as neo-noir films that have been made on smartphones. Sorry, I can't think of from the top of my head, but from a technical point of view, so if you talk about lighting, that's the oldest special effect, and depends on what kind of lighting gear you can get to help your productions. That if you can be very creative with this. There's like lots of great YouTube videos how you can like, you know, make the reflectors yourself, and you know, you buy an expensive reflector, you just take some aluminum paper, you know, and you know, when we were in lockdown, you know, I showed my students, I still have it lying around here. You're like, you know, you don't have a tripod, you know, you can just build something, you know, and like it's not perfect, but you know, having not a tripod or having something like that, you know, with a bit of gaffer tape, it's all right, you know. So of course, some apps like Filmic Pro I think is really fantastic, because if someone tells me you can't film in low light situations, my answer is yes, you can. You just need to understand how the ISO works. And so if you work with Filmic Pro, you can keep your ISO really quite low, that there is no grain in the image, that there's no, you know, no image distortion. If then there's not enough light, you just have to like, you know, introduce lights into the scene, and then it sort of thinks about how you develop the lighting, and of course how you work with shadows, and how you work with, you know, the effects that you want to make happen. And I think from a technical point of view, there's no problem with smartphone filmmaking. The great thing I think about smartphone filmmaking is that you would need to probably experiment a lot more, because you don't want to like, you know, get the crew and get everyone together and then something doesn't work. But with smartphone filmmaking, you can experiment all the time. And so I think that is something really which, before you start shooting the production, you can do lots of experiment in the pre-production and try to make things happen this way. There's also for the post-production some really great, if you film on Filmic Pro and then change to the lock mode, so with the cinematographer's pack, that means you get more dynamic range, so you get, you know, more you know, darker and more lighter you know, image information, so to say. You can then also use Film Convert for the editing, and that means that, you know, there's a whole production pipeline you know, lined up for this. I didn't want to do this session on a too technical note, because I think the book is something that, you know, has a bit of a shelf life. You will find some inspiration in the book for neo-noir films, for sure. The Red Carpet in Your Pocket, there's a few films that sort of use these, you know, strategies that could be approachable for that.
Thank you so much, sir. And we have another questions in chat box. Let me read out it. Shubroto Dashdeep asks, sir, do you have to make a film for this session, and is it compulsory?
Do we have to make a film for these? What do you mean, for this session? I'm not really sure. But yeah, you can make a film and then submit it to DIMFF and to Mina, of course. That would be like, you know, even if you say it's not compulsory, just make one anyhow, you know. And I think just give it a go. Like, you know, don't worry too much about what your expectations are. You learn from every project that you make, you know. If you know, of course, you know, if you put lots of time, effort, maybe you have a budget into it, you want to make a great film, of course, you know. But you can, you know, you can start with small steps and then, you know, build up. So I quite like Conrad Mess, who says, you know, the best thing you can do is talk to all your friends, you know, because they can help you. And I think that is like a great way to, you know, to move forward. There's a question there, extra lenses. Yes, I mean, that's there's lots of extra lenses that you can get. The most popular one is probably the Moondog Labs lens, which I also have. I'm a really big fan of it if you want to film in anamorphic, so like really having a cinematic look in your smartphone film. That can really help for this. And yeah, Soderbergh has used it, Baker has used it, you know, lots of Mina filmmakers have used it. The new phones, of course, the new iPhones, they give you, you know, a bit of lens option as well. But I've seen a project, I can't remember the name now, but it was really beautiful, where it was just filmed putting some water drops onto the camera, and you know, that gave some really amazing looks. So you can be very creative with this. I had one student, she made a really beautiful film where she put a bit of plastic in front of the camera, so the whole image was very, like, you know, zigzaggy, and it was a film about her dream world. It's beautiful. So yes, if you've got some money and it's Christmas is coming up, and if Santa brings you a lens, that's awesome, you know. are gonna do the same thing, and but if you don't have it, you don't need to have that lens to make a film, so it's always scale upward, but you can try without the lens. But there's some great lenses, there's some great blogs and forums about this environment, which is constantly evolving, so to say.
Thank you so much.
No worries. Good question. Anyone else? Any questions for me? Even if it's a comment or an observation?
Actually, sir, you have so nicely explained to everyone that no one has so many questions today.
Okay.
Excuse me. I think I might have missed out
Yes,
on a
yes,
point or
sure,
two.
sure.
I was wondering as to how I can gain access to the reading materials and stuff about things that you have walked us through a little while ago. The reading materials, the books that you have written and everything, and where I can find those.
Is that for me to answer, or someone want to jump in from the university?
No, I think you can answer it, please.
I'm sure you can get these links for your university library. So, I will share them after the session. And I'm sure you can get these books in the library. It shouldn't be a problem.
Zabin, you need to unmute yourself first.
So sorry. With this, we would like to conclude our question answer session for this event, and I would love to request everyone to fill up the evaluation form. Now, at this time of this event, I would like to request our Honorable Sadie Mezabin to convey her vote of thanks for today's session of Masterclass. You may please continue.
Thank you, Ms. Zabin, for inviting me to give the vote of thanks. I think this is the most boring part to give thanks, because there are so many things I need to say. I need to thank so many people for this event, but most importantly, I want to thank Dr. Max Pleasure for his wonderful session. And you have walked us through the whole journey of mobile filmmaking and give us different perspectives. The beginner here, with the new filmmaker, young filmmaker we have, they got so new ideas, so many ideas that they can implement on their work. And we're hoping to watch some wonderful films in the future. And besides that, I want to thank the team DIMFF 2022 for arranging such a beautiful and wonderful thought-provoking masterclass. I want to, Rashid, do you want to say something? And I want to thank our workshop team, Rafiq Ornov, and at the same time, I want to thank our honorable advisors, Dr. Kabul Khan, and at the same time, Mohammad Sajid Hussain sir, for being here with us throughout the session. At the same time, I want to thank our festival director, Zareen, and festival coordinator for arranging this festival. And finally, I want to thank all the participants who have been here and so patiently waited for the masterclass and participated with following all the rules and regulations. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your words. With this, we have finally come to the end of this session. Thank you again, Dr. Max, to be with us and everyone to be with us. Hope this masterclass helped you understand. I hope you have filled the evaluation form. If not, you still can. All that being said, good evening, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you, Max.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me. Wait, I've got my two words I need to practice.
Okay, let me help you. Yeah.
Donobat, thank you. Asa Kori Aba Dika Hobe.
আশা করি আবার দেখা হবে।
It was fun. Thank you. Yes,
Ma'am.
make some films, everyone. Submit them to DIMFF and Mina, and stay in touch.
We will do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.